You're listening to NorthWoods Church Matters, a podcast of NorthWoods Church in Evansville, Indiana, where we discuss why the local church matters and things that matter to the local church. I'm your host, Matt Higgins. Hey guys, welcome to the NorthWoods Church Matters podcast. This is part 2 of our discussion on work and vocation. Next question.
How do you know if God is calling you to quit a job or change professions?
This is one that's, I think, going hot and heavy through the congregation right now. So a couple things before I ask some test questions that are here. Due to the curse in Genesis 3, one of the things that God does intentionally do, he makes work hard and he makes labor difficult. And so when you go to work or do anything in this life, expect it to be difficult. That it is not going to be easy on multiple levels. One is just kind of due to the brokenness of creation. You're going to be working with broken people in a broken system, and everything is hard. I think the curse actually helps us as Christian because it helps mankind to focus more on future restoration in Christ instead of fulfillment in this life. That through the curse, God allows us to see, okay, you're never going to find fulfillment in work because this stuff stinks in this life. And then sometimes work is just difficult due to the brokenness of creation, as I mentioned. So a couple of questions that I think are important to ask. One, are you using your gifts, abilities, and talents according to their highest and best use? And so has God given you this ability or this talent or this spiritual gift and you're just not using it? And God may be asking you to do something better or higher with it. Another question is there a need that God is showing you that is not fulfilled? Like, you don't have to do everything, but if God has placed on your life like this special need, like you're really interested in orphan care, or you're really interested in working in the pharmaceutical industry, like you just think that's a wonderful thing to do, that's okay to fulfill that type of need if you see there's a need that's out there. Is God giving you a special passion or desire for another form of work? Feelings are not everything, but passion is something. Like, we're passionate about where we work. Am I making a move based on God's prompting or personal feelings? And I think this is a mistake that a lot of people make, is they make decisions and make switches based on my personal happiness, or I just feel rotten right now where I am, or I'm going through a hard situation.
Yeah, I think we see that a lot, right? I'm in this job. I hate it for X reason. I have this other opportunity. I'm not even going to think about it. I'm going to jump to it because it feels better. And then you get there and that same problem occurs again.
Yeah. And I think that I read today, and I was going to quote this statistic and I forgot to write it down. So this may or may not be true, but I think it's safe to say, without the statistic, job satisfaction in the U.S. is at an all-time low. And I believe the statistic in 2012, the Labor Department found that only 30% of people are satisfied with their job. That's a lot of people that are out there that are doing something that they're just like, yeah, this stinks. I don't like that. One more question to ask is there a need for discipleship and evangelism at your current setting that you may be ignoring? That those people that you hate or can't get along with, maybe as God is placing you there not to be the influenced, but the influencer, the person that is on the ball, reaching out to those people.
So why do people leave their jobs? Why do people want to leave their jobs? Y'all tell me.
Unhappiness.
Why are they unhappy?
The answer I want to say is the wrong answer, but this isn't fulfilling me.
Okay.
Or they think the grass is greener.
Yeah.
Right.
Money.
Money is oftentimes one of the larger pieces. I mean, so here's the really easy question, or the really easy answer to the question, how do you know that you're supposed to leave? If you get fired, if you get laid off.
Right.
That's the easy answer.
Yeah.
If you're told there's the door, the answer has now been given.
Mm-hmm.
Assuming that hasn't happened, I think that the largest issue is what's the motive?
Yeah. I think that taps into what you just said, Ivan. The grass is greener. But the bigger question is, which grass are we talking about?
Yeah.
And that often can reveal heart idols. Is it more money? Or do I long more harmony in my workplace? Or there's something that I feel like I'm missing where I'm at, that it just seems so real and so much better at someplace else.
No.
And that often happens in church life too.
That's right.
People like, oh, this church is full of hypocrites. They look so real over there. And people get into the next church and like, oh,
They're hypocrites
they're
too.
hypocrites too.
Everybody's a hypocrite.
But, this happens in work too. People jump ship and they go someplace else and they're not satisfied there either because it's never going to provide fulfillment.
I think one of the best things that we can do whenever we're in moments like this of trying to figure out, do we take the job? Do we not take the job? Is you find 2 or 3 people who know you and who you trust, who will take the scriptures and ask good, solid biblical questions about trying to understand your motive for why you would even be thinking about leaving your workplace.
Yeah.
Because this is where making disciples who make disciples matters. Because if I'm living in community with other believers, then I can live in community in such a way as to say, I'm working at Windstream, I'm not happy, here's why, and I could go to place X. And here's what I'm getting paid here, here's what I would get paid there. Would you mind helping me think and pray through this? And if it's somebody who knows you well, they would then ask questions knowing your sinful tendencies, as well as understanding how does God's economy work? How does God's kingdom work? And they would be asking it. But the problem is we don't do that. Everything I just said, we don't do that. And that breaks, as a pastor, that breaks my heart. We do not live in community with each other on the larger issues because we hide at that point in time under, well, it's personal. Okay. Well, it is personal, but we also make awful personal decisions because we don't live in community.
Yeah.
I think that answered part of my next question too, because I was going to ask, should we go for those promotions, right?
And I think that the answer to that sometimes is yes. I think the answer, so let me give an example. If person A has an opportunity for a promotion, but their heart is that I'm going to use this promotion for the glory of God. I'm not going for the promotion because I want everything better for me, nor am I doing this for prestige or fame or accolade or title, which all points to me. I'm doing this because I want God to be honored and God to be glorified, and I'm going to take this. I desire this promotion so that this promotion puts me in a position of biblical influence, of godly influence. Even the funds could be used for my family. Yes, could be used for my family, but also there are now more funds that could be used for the kingdom's sake. All of these things would be considered. So I don't believe that we should be in a situation where we sort of have to beat ourselves up and say, okay, well, this just means that none of us can ever have a promotion. That's not what I would propose. I'm simply proposing we should always be checking our heart.
And I think that the promotion, I 100% agree with you. And I think that the kingdom of God and doing things for the kingdom of God is the highest consideration to promotion. There are some sub things that I think you could think of as well. One is, can I care for my family better by taking a promotion?
Sure.
Like this provides me with more flexible hours, or I'm going from night shift to day shift and I'm actually going to see my people. Some people I know have taken promotions because this provides them flexibility in order to serve the church. I can finally go on a mission trip, or I can take a vacation, or I can care for my family this way. But I would say in the same thing, some of the people I'm proudest of in NorthWoods, there are people that I know that have taken a demotion in their job because they have seen this, okay, this is affecting my family, or this is affecting my spiritual life. And I know multiple people in NorthWoods that have taken a demotion or switched jobs because they've got their head on straight and they're caring about the right things. And I think that's, to their credit, should just be awesome to the glory of God.
I agree.
Yeah.
How do you know if God is calling you to Christian ministry?
You want to take this one first?
He is. I think that's my short and sweet answer. I can give you a longer one, but this goes back to sacred, secular. You are called to Christian ministry. Now, are you going to do that at Kemper, Windstream, Toyota, Evansville-Vandenberg School Corporation? Are you going to do that here at NorthWoods? Don't know. But we need to stop using language that defines it as Christian ministry is only what I do. Yeah. That's a mistake.
Yeah. Or feeling like Ivan working at Kemper or Carey working at Windstream is less of a calling than what Bobby or Matt is doing at NorthWoods. In some ways, what you guys do is harder than what we
100%.
do. Yeah.
100%.
When I first this was the first job I got out of college. And when I first started in it, I was kind of just took it because it was going to pay, right? First real experience. And part of me struggled for a little bit because I'm like, oh, this is a secular job. Is this what I need to be doing? And Bobby, it was actually something that you shared that helped me find peace in that. And that it was, you use the example of yourself going to McDonald's, not because I like the food, but because there are people there that I think I can help. And that really opened my eyes to, oh man, yeah, I may be surrounded by people that don't live life by me, but that's not a bad thing.
No, that's right. Now, let me go to what I think is the heart of the question, which is, so what if, what if Joe, who's sitting in the pew of NorthWoods, all of a sudden the Lord has been dealing with Joe to leave a workplace and to go to the mission field? When does Joe recognize that he should do that? And this is where not everybody's going to agree with this, Matt. But my opinion is that thought that is going through his head, he simply needs to pursue, period.
Because let me think. I think I got that right. Because the thought is in his head.
Yeah, he should pursue it. Now, that initial pursuit should be similar to what I said earlier about get godly people around you. Check your heart, check your motives, live in a biblical community. Does the biblical community affirm that? In our case, we may send you to the International Mission Board, and the International Mission Board may give you a thumbs up or a thumbs down. We would be okay with it. But pursue it. Why would I say that? Because that thought didn't come from Satan. I don't have to worry about that. Generally, 95+% of the time, that thought's not being generated from your flesh because you're not generally entering the mission field to make money. So you're going down a path that is not self-affirming. It is giving up self.
Right.
And Matt, I think you've shared this before, but what did that look like for you when you answered the call to ministry?
Yeah. So part of it was just kind of an extension of what I was doing. Because when I was in college, I was doing kids ministry, student ministry. When I got to Massachusetts, right after getting married, I got into church and I was doing student ministry. And when I got to Urbana, Virginia, I was doing paid part-time student ministry for a local church that was there. And so it was, to some extent, just an outgrowth of what I was doing. And the question really wasn't, should this be what I'm doing? It's, should this be my job? And I think a lot of good ministry calling is like that. Like, it's not so much, should I switch what I'm doing, but should this be all of what I'm doing? I think often people make mistakes, like considering the calling into ministry by trying to do something they're not already doing. The person that wants to become an evangelist, but yet they've never had a gospel conversation with anybody. A person that wants to be a pastor and yet has never taught at anything, even though he's had opportunities to do so. We go into ministry imperfectly, but this should be an extension of our life and the giftedness that God has given. And so when I approached my wife and said, hey, maybe I should do this as my job, and she said, it's about time. And so the ultimate thing is your church should affirm that. And then people who know you well, who are godly people, should affirm that as well. And some things to think about. Is your family supportive and willing to sacrifice for the calling? If you're going to go into ministry, you got to make sure your bride wants to do it. And then are you willing to sacrifice? Because ministry is hard. Ministry is hard. Bobby, how many people do you know that went into ministry in seminary, or you went to seminary with, that are still in ministry?
4 of us used to skip chapel and go to Bojangles. I'm the only one left of those 4. The amount of guys who I went to college with who are no longer in ministry is substantive. Yeah, no, there's a whole lot. There are more not in ministry than are.
Yeah, I know one guy who is Casey, who used to pastor in Bristol, Virginia, and then he's now in Louisiana, and he's still pastoring. He's the one guy that I know from seminary that's still pastoring. Most people have dropped out.
And I suppose in those situations, is that the devil at work?
Yeah. Satan, person's flesh, person, some would say, that they got through college and then recognized that they made a mistake. I'm one of those people who don't underestimate the spiritual aspect of people who went to college to surrender their lives for ministry and then lives get shipwrecked. I know one guy his name is David, who right as he graduated, his wife left him for another woman. And it totally changed him. So they used to always tell us in college and seminary, they used to always say, look around you. Not that people wouldn't graduate, but that people wouldn't last. And I would just say that's played itself out to be true.
Yeah. I would say just from a personal level, there is not a day that goes by that the devil doesn't whisper in my ear, this is not something you should be doing.
Sure. Sure.
I love working at NorthWoods, but the proposition of quitting and doing something easier is always a temptation that gets thrown out by the devil.
And this goes back to why I say, like, if someone comes up to me and they say, hey, I'm thinking about missions, my first response is, why are you just thinking?
Do it.
Go.
Yeah.
Do it. So this potentially is scaring some people who are hearing this. But if you come to me and you tell me you're thinking about missions, my next response is going to be, then why are you just thinking?
And use both of our examples.
Yeah.
Bobby, you're in preaching labs and competitions and all this stuff when you were a kid. And so you're out there using your gifts to the glory of God. My example is what I said is that I'm just doing student ministry. I just changed from part-time to full-time. And if you come to us and you said, I want to be a full-time missionary, are you doing missions?
Right.
The people that come and they want to make a hard left turn in their life are the people that maybe we need to counsel to say, are you really sure this is what you should be doing?
Yeah. And I think Matt's going to be in agreement with this, but the only caveat or curve I'd throw to that is, and I'm speaking to two tech people in the room, so I'm just going to use tech as an example. But if someone came to us and they said, I believe God's called me into missions, and they were a tech person, my next response is, what do you think you're going to do?
Right. Yeah.
Because it very well could be that they could do missions as a tech guy.
Right. I have a friend that is an IT and he worked for IMB.
Yes, 100%. So you don't have to go work for the International Mission Board and be a preacher. You can go and be a contractor. You can go do whatever it is God has made you and just do it somewhere else making disciples. But it also goes back to the very first question, which is, what if I'm supposed to be called into Christian ministry? You are. Wherever you go to work tomorrow, you should approach that like Christian ministry. The only question is, are you getting paid to do Christian ministry by a Christian organization like a church or a mission board? That is it. That, to me, that's the only difference.
Yeah. I just woke up one day and was like, maybe I should do this as a job. And it was really the calling of the Lord, because I would have been content just working with students for no pay, and because I just love kids and I love just teaching the gospel to them.
What about those people that are stay-at-home parents? How do you know if God's calling you to be a stay-at-home parent instead of work?
I think that the first question that comes to my mind is I assume that because you're thinking about it, you believe that God might be calling you to be a stay-at-home parent. Romans 14 says that what one person does very well may be different than another person. One person may say, to use Sunday as an example, Sunday is a day set aside for the Lord. Another person says all the days are set aside for the Lord, and they approach things differently. If a person comes to me and says, I believe that God's calling me to be a stay-at-home parent and homeschool, let's go there too. If we're going to go down the, If we're going to go down the hole, baby, we're going to go down the hole.
Let's do it.
If someone says, I'm supposed to be a stay-at-home parent and I'm supposed to homeschool, my response to that is, I celebrate that with you. I don't know of a reason why to tell you you're wrong. My wife was a stay-at-home parent and homeschool. Okay, so the Pells celebrate that. However, if you come to me and you say, I'm supposed to work and our kids are not going to be homeschooled and this is how we're going to do life, I'm going to celebrate that with you as well. Because I don't believe that there has to be a way that every believer operates on this topic. I see this as a Romans 14 issue, which gives examples of leeway.
Yeah. And there are seasons of life for every decision that gets made. There are seasons of life when you get older, you're like, I'm not working anymore. That's a calling from the Lord as well. So just because you're called to be a stay-at-home mom for a while, either doesn't mean that's forever.
Yeah, and actually, us going down that path is probably wise. What do you do with the person who's retired at the age of 65
Yeah.
and the person who's retired at 65, but now people are living longer than they have ever lived before?
Mm-hmm.
Let me just go ahead and quickly say, you ain't dead yet.
Right.
It is your responsibility to live for Jesus every day, whether or not you go to a factory or you don't go to a factory.
Or you go to knee rehab for your knee replacement.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
You need to do what you need to do for the glory of God.
Yeah. There's lots of people that have been influences for the Lord, regardless of whether they're in the hospital or whether they're in the nursing home or whatever phase of life that they're in. I think of that Roy Givens
That's
towards
right.
the end of his life. I mean, it was
That's right. Eloise Cole
Eloise Cole
as well.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. You could be a gospel sharer even if you're retired or
That's
at
right.
the end of life.
How can companies foster and build a culture that enables spirituality or aligns with the Christian faith of their workers and employees?
So if a president of a company came to me and they said, I would like to make the environment here a more Christian environment because I believe it to be the healthiest thing I can do for my employees, I would say to them 3 or 4 things. One is I'd say, treat your people fairly. Just from an ethical perspective, treat your people well. I would say, consider getting a chaplain who will come and check on your people's spiritual health and emotional health. And I would encourage that chaplain to have a time of prayer once a week. Those are very simple things. But if you want to begin to change culture, if you did those 3 things, treat your people well. Just Colossians 3 says to the person who is the employer, God is always watching. So my advice is know that God is always watching, treat your people well. And then have someone, because it probably can't be the employer. He's thinking about profit and loss. And I get that, the mission of the company. He's working down that path. But he can choose to engage a chaplain.
It's interesting, even in the secular world, what do people typically judge a company by?
Profit and loss.
Well, no. Well, not that's if you're investing.
Oh, you mean from a
From a worker
standpoint?
Yeah.
Benefits and
Yeah,
Yeah.
compensation.
How much you care for your people.
and self-health, mental health has become very big in the benefit space. There's constantly the addition of online support for mental health.
Yeah, and the younger you are, the more you value that. The younger you are, the more you value having mental health support, the online counselor that you can call at any time.
Yeah. And what's the biggest red flag for so-called Christian companies is people will often say, well, they don't treat their people well.
That's right.
People always notice the heart of a business caring for its people.
That's right.
So to kind of round this out and take it full circle, how does work allow me to be a Christian?
I think from the missional thing that God puts in the Christian's life, that we're called to reach out to people. We're called to do the Great Commission by sharing the gospel, but also discipling the nations. Work allows me to do that. For a lot of us, you get knee deep very quickly in the midst of a world of lostness where you have these natural opportunities to share the gospel. Like you're not out there knocking on doors looking for someone to witness to. God literally is plopping you down in the midst of a group of people that need help and they need guidance. And sometimes we overlook that. Like we think of our work environment as a burden instead of an opportunity. And instead of wanting to help people, we want to run away from those people. God in his sovereignty knows better, and he can use us there.
Yeah. So I think of the fact that the average person has their work environment. If they're a Christian, they have a church environment. Of course, they have home. But if we push home to the side, because home is, in your case, 5 people, 4 people, you're 2. And I would just say you generally have work, church, and maybe a third space you might go to. Your work is going to be more than 1/3 of your waking hours. It is the largest environment for you to live Jesus out in this world. That is how. And for us to ignore it is to ignore the greatest mission field the average believer has.
You don't need to go to Ecuador. God has put you in a place where
That's right.
you're surrounded by lost people.
That's right. That's right. I want to ask a question before we're done. What do we do? How do we advise the person who wants to share the gospel at work, but as they want to share the gospel at work, they're concerned because of the nature of work policies?
Right. Yeah. I think the term relational evangelism is just overused. But that being said, I think that you can evangelize in ways where you're not permitted to verbally say something in a work setting with acting like an ethical, moral person that cares for people and loves people.
100% agree. 100% agree. And not only that, so if you're in a conversation with someone, they find out that you're a churchgoer, they find out that you find out their life stinks, and they want to engage with you, well, then you have a conversation with them after work, or you have a conversation with them at lunch, or you have a conversation with them on break.
You make the time.
You make the time. That's exactly right. You don't have to be in a situation where you're taking time away from the company. Mm-hmm. Now you're unethical.
Yeah, right.
We don't want to. I don't want you to think that you have to be unethical to stand up for Jesus. Live for Jesus. Communicate Jesus in such a way that it's just a part of who you are.
Yeah, and I've never had a job that's a non-church job where we didn't hang out with each other in social circles in addition to the work environment. Right. You just become close to some people. They become your friends, and you just hang out. And so those can be the opportunities where you verbally share the gospel with people.
So I'm going to take this moment to toot the horn of somebody else. I have the pleasure of working with Dan King. And several years ago, somebody else that we work with was like, man, that Dan, I tell you, there's something different about him. He did not do or say anything directly about God, but the way that he treats people and situations, it's evident.
Mm-hmm. And if you find someone like that who is kind, is loving, and that person says to you in the middle of your pain, I'm here for you. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, there's an open door that there can be a full-fledged gospel conversation at lunch or after hours. And that's what I want you, what everyone who's here, who's listening to hear. This is an opportunity for you to live Jesus. Talk Jesus, because he's a part of your life. And then look for the opportunity to have full-fledged gospel conversations at lunch, at break, after work. Do all of those things.
Amen to that.
This was so good. Thank you guys so much for coming in, and it was great to have Matt. Bobby, it's always a pleasure to have you. Thank you, and hopefully we can do this again.
Yeah, we will. And I have a great business idea for Ivan and Carey. I think you should form a business that's just called Printers Only.
No.
Where you only work on printers.
Yeah. I think I hear the ministry field calling me. Oh, wow.
We'll talk later.
We'll talk later. Thanks for tuning in to the NorthWoods Church Matters podcast. If you'd like to find out more about NorthWoods Church, you can visit us at our website, www.northwoodschurch.org. Again, that's www.northwoodschurch.org.